Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you so much for coming out. My name is Russ Bradford. I am your councilman here in District 13, elected back in September. It's still, as I say, it's still an honor and a pleasure to serve all y'all on the Metro Council. Purpose of tonight's gathering, there is a developer that's wanting to develop the property next to the daycare center. And I've met with the developer a couple times and told him what I would like to see done is that they do this listening session with the community so that the developer can kind of learn what the community is expecting, what they want, what they'll be happy with, so that from the developer standpoint, it'll help him with his bottom line because he's not constantly having to redo his plans, redo permitting and all that, so that we can both have something the developer's happy with and the community is okay with first time off the bat, and help save a lot of headaches, both on the developer side and our side and my side. So again, I appreciate everybody for coming out. If you have any questions or any comments, you just raise your hand. We will get you a comment card and a pen so we can collect that information, and then at the end we will go through and read off those questions. That way we can kind of help control the flow of the tonight's meeting and make sure that everybody who has a question is able to get that question or comment recognized. So with that being said, I do want to thank, we've got from the Metro Council Planning Liaison, Matt Wilkinson is here, he's in the back. So he can help if there's any questions related to the planning process and whatnot. And then the developer is right over here, former council member Josh Stites. And so at this time, I'll go ahead and invite him up here to talk with everybody and to give his idea of what he wants to do and get y'all's input. And just one last piece of housekeeping, I just want to make sure that we give everybody opportunity to hear, so try and keep side conversations to a minimum so people can hear, and try and be courteous and polite to your neighbors, to the developer, and to everybody here. And one last thing, just to thank Pastor Cersei and the congregation here at Whitworth Memorial for allowing us to meet here tonight. So with that being said, Mr. Stites.
Thank you, Council. Well, good evening. Thank y'all for coming. I know everybody would, I'm sure, rather be doing something else, but I appreciate you being here. Russ commented a couple times that I was the developer, and I guess technically that's true, but I should confess that I've never done any developing. So, as he pointed out, I was on the council from 11 to 15, and so I got to know this area well from that experience. Jenny and I lived in Woodland Point, and we moved in 2017 back to Cookeville, where she and I are both from. So we don't live here any longer, but I think it was early December when I started talking to Mr. Etherly, who has the daycare center, Mr. Greg Etherly, and his wife Lynn. And they have there's 2 parcels that surround the daycare center. And those 2 parcels equal about, I think it's just under 7 acres. And so I started talking to Mr. Etherly about purchasing that land, and we came to an agreement, I think it was the middle of January. And at that point, I reached out to Councilman and asked if we could meet. And so we met in Donaldson, and I just kind of laid out my thoughts about what I understood could be done on the land currently, and what options were, potential options were for a rezoning for greater density. Greater density meaning more lots. And so Russ did a great job of saying he wanted the community to be involved and to make that decision. And so it was, I think a couple of weeks after that, we finalized things on the purchase of the land, on the contract, and then I reached out to Russ again, and just to give an update by phone. and we got this appointment scheduled, this meeting scheduled. And so I don't have a conceptual plan. I don't have any design to show you because there's not one. I understand that this land has a little bit of a scarred history given previous attempts at development. And so I'm aware of that and sensitive to that. So I think I have two kind of parallel tracks that I'm going down currently, which has brought me to this meeting tonight. And I have tried to be since December when I began this process to be very transparent with the councilman, and we'll certainly continue to do so tonight. I think the two paths that I'm going down, that I'm exploring, is one, a development without a full-blown rezoning. So as I understand it, and Matt and I were discussing this, I just met Matt tonight, but from what I have been told, from my expectation is that there's the possibility of developing the property with 23 lots as it's zoned. If we do the cluster zoning, that would leave that would put the lots closer together, but it would leave the additional unused land would remain, and it's not a big parcel of land, but it would leave some unused land that was undeveloped. That is, as the zoning code is currently written, it would allow for 23 lots to be zoned, to be developed. The kind of parallel track that I'm exploring is there an option, does it make sense for the community in order to allow for a denser zoning? So if we explored 43 lots instead of 23, and I know it's always less is better. I understand that. But if as the developer, if we said we would create a pocket park, a dog park, or a picnic pavilion or something of that nature as a part of the development, does it become worth it to the community to allow more units for the trade-off of a public space like that? And I don't know what that answer is. That's in part why we're here tonight. So I've kind of laid out everything that I understand and thinking about this. I don't have anything beyond that. And so I think as Russ said, we wanted to put questions on note cards, and would be happy to answer as many questions as anyone has.
We have to write it down, so we just ask.
But while we're doing that, I meant to start with this by way of introducing myself. When we moved in 2017, moved back to Cookeville so that I could work with my dad, who does construction. And so our family construction company is called J&S Construction, and since 2017, it'll be 3 years this month, actually, but 3 years this month that I've been working with him. So we do construction. I've never done development before, so.
everybody that got a question, got a card? And just when you're done, just go ahead and put your hand up in the air. Request. So first question, would the park be used by public and or just community that you build?
What happened before is they were gonna do a park and whatever, but only the community that it was built around was going to be allowed to use it. So that doesn't affect any of the rest of us, that's my question.
So I can answer part of that, because, you know, that was one suggestion I brought up, was a public park, public area. So I did reach out to the council office, and there's two options we can have. There, we could do a public easement. He could let us know what part of the parcel would be the public area. We could do a public easement. What that would do is, whatever park structures, the maintenance, all that would be handled by, I would assume there'd be an HOA on this site. So the HOA would take care of the maintenance, but because it's a public easement, it'd be open to the public, and the HOA could never say you can't come, because it's a public easement. The second option would, he could just take that property and deed it over to the city, and then Metro Parks would take care of it. Is that correct? Because that's the information I got.
Yes, and the former is probably a lot more likely than the latter with the budget situation.
So, but that's what the two possible ways we could go with ensuring that the public space could be open for the entire community and it couldn't be shut off by the HOA. Why won't?
Just because you give it to the government doesn't mean they take care of it.
Correct.
The lot right across the road from it is government, they don't take care of it.
And why more units?
Why, what?
Why more units? More than the 23.
You're already scheduled, you can have this many and there's nothing we can say about it, and I'm not meaning that in an ugly way, okay? So why more? Because that means more impact, more traffic, more people coming out of there. And Elm Hill is busy.
Yes, ma'am. So, why more units? It would be, economically more beneficial to me if there were more units. But in order for, it to be more economically beneficial to me, what I was proposing was, does it make sense if it's also beneficial to the community by way of a public park? So,
Will it be low income housing?
no, but let me say this, I'm not, I have no intention of making it low-income housing. I don't think that the price at which the land is being purchased and the price at which it would be developed, that it would be economical for it to be, I don't think the numbers work for it to be low-income housing. So I think, I want to make sure everything I say is truthful and accurate to you. So, could someone purchase it later on, because they would be owner occupied? We're not talking about apartments or rental units, but I guess someone could buy it and turn it into that. I think that's extremely unlikely, because it's a.
Is it townhouses or is it individual homes?
Well, I don't have a plan. I have been, this week was sent a plan that had 43 units. It had 16 townhouses, and the difference, I think, 27, were single-family houses. And they basically said, we would be interested in purchasing it if we could do something like this. And it was 16 townhomes, 23, 26 single-family residences, and they were all owner-occupied.
And if there be an HOA, there could be stuff that puts us in the covenant as far as the rental of it. So that's, from my knowledge of HOAs, that's something we could probably ask to be put into the covenant. Question is, who is your engineer?
I have not hired an engineer. I've not paid anyone to do any design. I did meet with Mr. Roy Dale, who I know has been involved on the previous rezonings. And the reason I met with Mr. Dale is because he had been involved in the previous rezonings. And so he had the survey, he had things. I was able to have a conversation with a site engineer, which is what he is, without it costing me anything, because he already had the information.
Okay, got price point of the units, number of bedrooms, number of baths, number of car spaces, and estimated time of completion.
So the price point of units, I think what we would hope was at the end of development that the lots would sell for approximately $70,000 a unit, for just the lot. For just the lot. So, what I'm being told by multiple real estate agents is that, as a rule of thumb, contractors pay 25% of whatever the finished value of the home is. So if they paid $70,000 for the lot, 4 times that would be $280,000. And so the starting price point should be somewhere around $280,000.
Single family homes, what about the?
Single family homes. It would follow the same rule of thumb, and so those lots would probably be 50,000, maybe 40,000. So I don't think you're going to buy any townhomes in Davidson County right now for less than 200. I don't think. I don't know, but I don't think that's true. So just as a rule of thumb, and I'm obviously, if I knew exactly, I would have a greater advantage trying to develop it, but I don't know for sure. And kind of the same thing with beds and the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. I think the size of the lots, the size of the property probably lends itself to kind of the standard 3, 2.5, or 3 bedroom, 2 bath size house. Same thing for car spaces. It's probably looking like a 1 to 2 car garage. Probably a 2 car garage on the single family houses, a 1 car garage on the townhome side. And then estimated time of completion. We have until September to close on the land. So I would like to be able to, for a home builder to be able to start building before the wet season gets here, December, November. Now, whether or not that actually happens is anybody's guess at this point.
Okay. So we've already touched on the estimated cost or value of the lots. Will either option that you're talking about, whether it's base zoning or the cluster, require additional traffic lights?
I don't know.
That would,
Traffic lights.
a traffic light, that would be subject to a traffic route demand review by the Department of Public Works. That would come later on. Just as a rule of thumb, it would depend, if it's coming in and out of that development, like off of that development, 23 lots isn't a whole lot, so I doubt it, but I'm not an engineer, so they would have to do a full study as a part of their subdivision process.
Is there a rule of thumb as far as lot and there's?
It's based on daily traffic volumes that I don't know because I'm not an engineer. I'm sorry.
Are you personally buying the property? Or if you're buying as a business, what's the name? I believe you covered that earlier, your construction company and.
Yes, we would, it would not be J&S Construction buying it. It would probably be some entity that is just in name only, essentially.
Okay. Who will be the builder?
I have, from the time that I got the property under contract, I began reaching out to a lot of home builders, some Donaldson home builders, some local Nashville home builders, and some regional home builders. And so there's a lot of interest in the Donaldson area, as you know. And so there's a lot of folks that are interested in folks being contractors and interested in building homes. So I don't know who the builder would be. I can't say right now, but there are lots of folks that are looking.
And what is the plan to address the access in and out?
So I think we'll have to do a traffic study. I imagine that will be required, and that will, traffic engineers in the planning department, I think, will determine at that point what the egress looks like.
Okay. Next question is, do the 43 lots, would that require a rezoning? If he does it as a cluster, it would fall under the base zoning.
So the 43 lot option would definitely require rezoning. It would probably be an SP, to be honest. Because the cluster lot option, they're limited to the number of lots that they're allowed under the RS10 zoning that it is now. It's just they can go down 2 lot sizes, so instead of 10,000 square foot lots, they can have 5,000 square foot lots. But that difference in size is common open area for things like detention and whatnot. So it's the same number, it's the same density, just on a smaller footprint.
So just a follow-up to that rezoning would not then allow someone to say, hey, look, I decided I want to put apartments on it. Would that?
No, so if it's an SP, it would be, so if it's an SP, that's like a horizontal property regime type product where you have like a cottage and then the townhomes. It would be written in such a way that it would say townhomes and detached multifamily. But, and then there would be a site plan associated, and they would have to follow the site plan. Any changes made to that would be considered probably a major amendment, and would have to go back through council, and you guys would have a chance to come out and speak against it and everything.
But SP zoning is specific to that plan.
Yeah, it's
Whatever
specific.
they choose that plan. to
Whatever
be.
they draw on that plan and get the plan approved is what's allowed. So if he
Right.
draws 16 townhomes and 23 cottages, they have to, that's what they can build. They might be able to lose a unit if there's some issue, like if they need more drainage, but they can't add a unit.
But once you make it SP, it's SP, and they can
Yes.
change that through the council without necessarily going back through.
So they can, if it's a
Committee.
minor modification, yes, but if they're changing the actual type and density like that, going from one form to another, it would probably be determined, and I can't speak for the planning department because I work for the council office, but it would in all likelihood be a major amendment, which would require going back through council, which would give you guys a chance to come out.
And the thing with SPs is if we do go the SP route, y'all have a lot of say in what is done. So if y'all say you want all the houses to be brick, that goes in the SP, we can ask them, you know, is that something you'd be okay with? Or, you know, you kind of have a little say in the overall design of the exteriors, the lots and whatnot, so.
Landscaping.
I don't agree with that, because we went through that when they built the daycare, and that has not been followed.
That was before
So,
my
and
time.
Josh
and,
was
I've heard a
actually
lot,
the-
I've heard that a
Josh-
lot, but.
Josh was the council member at the time. I went back and forth with you on several emails.
No, we follow.
That was who got it rezoned for the daycare in the first place, but afterwards, yes, absolutely. I've been here for a little over 20 years. So.
All right, so would the additional units include widening Elm Hill Pike? So,
Somebody's dreaming.
yeah, so that's something I'll go ahead and touch on. You know, a lot of people talk about Elm Hill Pike. I would love to see Elm Hill Pike widened, but the problem is the bridge right here. That is state property, and so the state would have to widen that bridge, or, because it wouldn't matter if we did 10 lanes on Elm Hill, it's going to shrink down to 2 lanes when you get that bridge, so. Right now, unless the state changes its mind and wants to widen that bridge or do something new, we're gonna have to figure out whether we can tweak the traffic lights and improve the flow, or if it's something where we do like they do downtown, where certain times of day, you only go a certain direction, we can try and look at that. But as far as widening Elm Hill right now, it's something we'd like to see happen. I just don't think we're gonna see it happen right now.
I will say though that as a part of the traffic review process, depending on the number of lots and the estimated trips generated, they may be required to add a turn lane and improve shoulder over with or required to dedicate right of way in front of their property. So it's not gonna be like a full widening, but to help people get in and out of their property and maintain the flow of traffic, they may, or in all likelihood, would probably be required to do some improvements down the pipe.
With the change of the property across the interstate, TDOT is no longer considering widening Emerald Pike. So,
But like our local public works could say they need to add a turn lane for traffic movement.
But that would only be on Emerald Pike, again.
That just be in that complex.
That would be like in front of
Yeah.
their area to ensure that like it doesn't cause a backup on Elmo Pike when people are trying to turn left.
Yeah, we tried that with the daycare and it was denied.
Another question about lights on Elm Hill. Based on the crime flowing onto the proposed property,
Based on crime on private property, there's videos of the residents of Terrace Park coming onto that property, breaking into storage buildings, dumping stuff out. There's videos of them breaking into the daycare center. I personally had one of the vagrants on our property, which we live across the street right up here. He threatened our son, said he'll pop his strap. He told my son, he says, you pop your strap and I'll pop mine. They were within 5 feet of our daughter's house. The police came and they picked this SOB up. He had so many outstanding warrants, and he was from Terrace Park, because we followed him. He went into Terrace Park, he changed clothes, he came out and walked up Elm Hill. The police picked him up. He had so many outstanding warrants, they took him down to the boot. So whoever buys that property is gonna have to deal with Terrace Park. So I don't think any of us are gonna be real eager to buy a $300,000 house next to Terrace Park.
Well, not only that, it speaks to the density of this. Nobody, I think, here wants a more I understand the concept, density benefits you, I get it, business owners, I understand. But as far as the happiness of pretty much everybody else around that, like everybody around Terrace Park, the more dense, the more crime, the more likelihood of crime, the less likely we are to be filled with this.
I agree, I don't want slums moving in either, because that's more people on my property. That's more people I'm liable to get shot with. Right here, here's my neighbor across the street, we're at the mercy of them walking up and down the street, we don't know what they're gonna do at any particular point. But the point is, the developers have to make so much money on it, you have a price point. You know, I mean, we're not moving in Bluefields, we're not moving in Brentwood, and I agree, I don't want slums down there either, because there'll be more than cockroaches. But the bottom line is, there's a baseline bottom line, you have to make so much money on a project, or it's not a project. And they're entitled to develop their land, they're entitled to sell their property. What happened to personal property rights? If you've owned something for many, many years, you're entitled to develop your property and sell it. But there's also a bottom line price that nobody can make it work below that margin.
And they went through this with sub-area zoning, years ago it was called sub-area zoning, now it's called planning, what's the? Overlays.
Overlays are.
SB zoning.
Yeah, well,
Mechanical.
before it was sub-area zoning, then it was,
Planned unit developments?
overlays, the area overlays. that
Oh,
they
are you
have.
talking about like the general plan?
Yes.
Oh, okay, like the
So-
concept area.
So everything in this area was zoned according to that,
Mhm.
and this property was zoned RS10 with that density.
Yeah.
And there were certain areas that were PDUs and everything else
Mhm.
for some of those higher density areas. So that was all taken into account at the
Yeah.
time. So that's our concern, and that was our concern with Roy Dale as well, is even though you may be making a park area and you may only have 23 units, if it's a high density complex, then that's going to bring in a certain type of class, a certain type of environment. And that's what we're talking about here. Nashville and Hip Donaldson in particular is popular because of what we have today. So changing that or adding more of that high density to it, even though you may be making a park area, it still brings in that vibe, that feel.
It can reduce the values of everything around it.
It can.
Which is
And-
not what we
And it
want.
has, absolutely it has, because, the Terrace Park's not the only subsidized housing area in this, section. And we've got a lot, I did a whole study on how many high-density housing areas we have within a 1 mile area of this property. So what we're looking for that property from the neighborhood, I hope I speak to everybody, is what it's zoned for today. And that is single-family homes, preferably R10, because we have a lot of RS10 in this area already, but it is RS10 today. So R10 or RS10.
RS10 is single family zoning, R10 allows for duplexes.
Oh, I have it backwards.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
It'll be probably the most easy for you to be able to do without
Yeah.
adjustment of zoning, without us looking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if he
you
went,
certainly would.
yeah,
Now,
if
I
he went to base
understand there's some-
zoning, he wouldn't have to come through the
Right.
community, we wouldn't have to vote on the council. Now, if he wanted to rezone it to an SP, that's, you know, we would
Right.
we'd have to have more meetings, figure out what that is, and then we'd have to go vote on it 3 times in the council.
Now, I understand there's some challenges with that because of the terrain. Because my understanding is Mr. Etherly already got in trouble once for filling in some of the land back there for drainage. So I'm not sure how much of that 6.2 acres is buildable. That's gotta be taken into account in how many houses you can put in.
Do they need any density building in Cookville? Because seems like we got plenty here.
I'm very familiar with
How about that?
Cookville too, because I'm actually from Cookville, I'm very familiar with JMS.
So as far as the security issues, I don't know if that's something that can be taken care of from the developer side, or if that's just, you know, you just have to be vigilant. But we can keep that in our mind when we're going through this process and just kind of keep thinking back on that. Unless you have something else you want to add to that?
Just that, as Ms. Luann pointed out, I know the current owners have had a lot of issues with people on their land. And presumably from the Terrace Park area. That is an issue currently. One, maybe could make the case, maybe not successfully, but could make the case that developing that area would help offset that in some ways. And so,
You can have a neighborhood watch like we did, we ran them out of our neighborhood. Cause we had that problem 2 years ago, we don't have that problem anymore.
From Terrace Park.
From Terrace Park, and every time they come in, cops are called, there's 5 of us out on the street wanting to know what you're doing there, what are you doing there, they quit coming. They decided we were way too visible.
One of the arguments we had with Roy Dale was the financial impact of the crime coming from Terrace Park. And if you go back to the houses that back up to Terrace Park on the other side, which is a different division of Larchwood, it has not, the single-family homes over there have not been impacted by Terrace Park's crime. Whether they've been affected by it is a different story. But their sale values have not. That was one of the arguments that Roy Dale had about trying to build single-family homes on that property. So that didn't hold water. So,
And I want to go ahead and read this question. I believe we've already touched on it and already kind of discounted this, but the question was, will they be Section 8? He's already stated that at the perceived price point, there won't be low-income housing and we probably won't have Section 8 options.
I think the reason that there's a housing issue in Nashville currently is because prices are just so high, it doesn't make economic sense.
But also too, there's not that much land left to build on. Builders have a hard time finding land.
And then, how big are the lots? Each lot's going to be, right now, 10,000.
That's right.
5,000 apiece the cluster lot option.
How much is that? Is that a quarter of an acre?
So, if you're
Is it
from,
what, an acre?
there's 43,560 square feet in an acre, so, it's like an eighth of an acre. If you go to Woodland
eighth of an
Point,
acre.
those are, 5,000 feet, the single-family residences there in Woodland Point off Bell Road, are about the same size.
But there will also be the common open area from, the balance is the common open area that's
That's right.
left open, maintained by the HOA for or whatnot.
Have you did any study on trying to figure out if you sell them for somewhere roughly 300,000, something like that, the neighborhood or a little less and more? By that Terrace Park, but that area there, are you gonna disclose the problem next door?
Terrace Park?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to be selling, cause I mean, like, personally, if I was looking for a house or a place to buy, and I knew that, I wouldn't buy it there. Maybe, you know?
There are general, like when you go on to Trulia and Realtor, there's like crime maps, but generally there are certain regulations that real estate agents have to abide by under the Fair Housing Act about what they can and cannot disclose. And so it would have to follow within those guidelines. And I'm not a Realtor, so I don't know those guidelines off the top of my head, but I do know there are certain restrictions on what they can and cannot say.
Cause I'd hate to see you build all this and have a hard time selling, especially if the recession gets in the middle of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question, I think, is a very important question to be asking right now on our current city climate. Would there be STRs on the property? Short-term rentals?
I think, as the Metro Code is currently written, aren't they in their moratorium on this?
Oh, I can answer that. So under the existing RS zoning, the only type of short-term rental that's allowed is owner occupied, where the owner has to live in the home that they rent out. If it does go to SP, because you do decide that you like the higher density for what it's worth, we can add a condition that takes out both owner occupied and non-owner occupied. And there's also the new zoning districts that just passed called the NS districts that he could also rezone to. That could be, but that's not for RRS. That would be for something like MU. But so I don't necessarily know, but there are new tools in the toolbox. So if that is a strong desire of the community to have no STRs, we can look at, and the councilman and the
We
developer.
talking like Airbnb?
Yes,
Yeah.
short-term rentals, rentals for less.
So are you saying right now Airbnbs are not allowed in our area?
Only owner occupied. The owner of the property has to, or the primary tenant has to reside in the home with. So that, like, so there's there's a non-owner occupied where you can just buy a condo and rent it out 365 days a year. There's the owner occupied where you have to prove that you live in that house as well. And generally speaking, it's like for the people that rent out certain rooms of their home.
And something else is, what, if there's a HOA, the HOA can put it in their bylaws that you cannot rent out as a short-term rental.
Yeah.
So that's some neighborhoods, that's how they're kind of combating this issue, is by putting it in their bylaws that you cannot do that. Do you have a question?
I was just going to reiterate those bylaws.
And they will definitely have an HOA?
Yes.
If they do the cluster lot option with the common open space, they'll be required to have the HOA to maintain the common open space as well as the drainage improvements.
Oh. I'm not.
Let's see, are we talking about the property from the entrance of Patio Villa to the daycare building?
So there is, it's immediately north of the daycare center and west of it. So the entrance, I don't know exactly how many lineal feet are off of Elm Hill Pike, but there is a strip of land that goes back to a gentleman's house back there. His land initially, when this was last proposed to be rezoned, his land was put with this land, and I think they were proposing 140 or something.
Yeah,
It
there's
was a
over
lot.
100.
So there's a small strip that goes back to his, but from his property to the daycare center, and it kind of dog legs around the daycare center is this property.
Do you have a map of that land or something?
I have a couple extra maps back there.
They're cutting it off. What's going there? Why did you
No,
come
that's
out
a
of
different
Patio
lot.
That's a
Villa?
different lot altogether.
Between the
Where
driveway.
What are you talking about?
If you're talking about the
Between
small
Patio
little lot
Villa
at the
and
intersection,
driveway,
that is,
there's a
there is
1.5
somebody that
acre
is putting
lot
6 houses.
putting there.
Okay.
And probably because it's 6 houses, if you look at how they did it,
So
it's kind of,
these
what
two
you
lots
explained
are
is like,
parcels.
that
So
property
this-
zone
this-
is 6
Like the
houses.
daycare, these are the
Just
apartments.
cluster them together
This is
so
the
they
flag
can
lot he
get
was showing, and this is
more
the
out of
property
it.
he's developing, these two
But he's,
parcels.
that's under base zoning, so that's nothing that needed council approval.
He's not buying this.
That's
Like
gonna
go behind that and all the way up.
I think that is 2 parcels over.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 parcel.
They're not gonna be connected.
Oh.
I'm not.
What is we doing?
That's just a.
That's what's we're doing.
Yeah.
No.
So this,
This material's for, this is for the house that's tore down.
The house they tore down, they're building 6 houses.
6 units or 6.
Now, anybody else got any other questions, any more cards?
One house, probably 6.
Anything else, any other issues you wanna bring up?
One house.
Okay.
what does it entail to get, what you're talking about as,
Now there's the.
getting them to do some kind of a check on the traffic? I mean, right now, traffic is a problem. Going, coming from Patio Villa, depending on what day it is, or depending on if there's a wreck on the interstate, we're backed up, if there's, you know, there's so many variables here. And, sometimes it's almost impossible just to get on Elm Hill Pike one way or the other because of the traffic flow.
Yeah, the speed
So,
limit in that area is 40 miles an hour, but the minimum speed people go is usually 50.
or 60, yeah.
60, the minimum.
Or,
They're
so,
flying through.
so that would be a main concern of mine, is the extra traffic, and would it be possible to have another, traffic light put up there somewhere, or at the entrance, or something to regulate some traffic? Give us a little bit of time, give us 5 minutes, instead of having to sit there, I've sat there sometimes 15 or 20
Well,
minutes.
and like Matt mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
the traffic study would be part of any development plan.
They would have to do a traffic light, they need a certain threshold. I'm not sure, that threshold is like a moving target a little bit. But that'll be determined by the traffic engineers at the Public Works Department when they review the application. So it's like.
Public Works.
Hopefully they don't do it when school's out like the last ones did, because they said there was no traffic, because they did it July when school was out.
And another issue with the traffic we're seeing on Elm Hill, it's not so much any development going on here, it's all the development on Antioch and Mount Juliet, because if there is an issue on 40, what do people do coming from Mount Juliet? They get off and they come down
That
Elm
was
Hill.
one of the other problems with the traffic study, they only did it from Bell Road down in Elm Pike, one direction, not the other direction, and didn't do Elm Hill, and didn't do Bell Road. So there were a lot of problems with that traffic study.
And those school bus drivers are getting all the NASCAR with their speed too.
Oh, coming for our subdivision.
They were in control for a while, but now
Yeah,
They
I've
take
seen, I've
them
seen
curves at a
several,
high bank, you
I've
know?
seen several firsthand just flying down this.
By the way, y'all can report them, because there was a thing, because I used to work on, it's called, pupil transportation, and you can report those school bus drivers. And they will slow them down or pull them out of the, been there, done it.
Any other questions while we have Mr. Stites here? And like I said, during the campaign, this was one thing I wanted to make sure we did was whenever developments happen, y'all have the opportunities to voice any concerns you have, ask any questions, so that whatever happens, whatever development develops, it's something that is beneficial to the developer, because this is why they're doing it, but something that we as a community can live with, because at the end of the day, we're the ones living out here next to it. He's all the way out in Cookville, so just wanna make, and that's why I expressed to him, I wanna make sure all sides, it's something that all sides can be happy with.
And thank you for coming out and
Yeah,
letting
we
us do
appreciate
this,
it.
because
Absolutely.
that isn't always how it happens, and we appreciate that.
Well, as I said at the beginning, I've tried to be transparent from the beginning, because I've been in his shoes before. And, some may say I didn't always do it well, but I've been in his shoes. And, I know it's not always easy, but, and I don't, I'm not interested in, frankly, upsetting anybody. And I know you never please everybody, but, I think there is,
We do have a bad history with Mr. Enzo,
with what?
with the leader of the daycare, the owner of the daycare. So we're a little apprehensive there.
Sure.
So certainly anything that you have proposed, hopefully you'll come to this group before you even submit it to the council. Because as was mentioned, the daycare wouldn't have been approved, and even Mr. Goss, who he bought it from, was quite upset when he found out that the Etherlys did not come through the proper channels with the community before he built the daycare, and then we were extorted into approving the daycare.
Well, the one thing I will say is, if he does decide to go through the route where it requires a rezone and has to go through the council, the buck stops with me. So if he tells me that he's had meetings and I reach out to some of y'all and y'all say no, or if it's a plan that y'all don't like, I'm the one that carries it. I can either keep it going, or I can say, nope, I'm gonna pull it, and we can try again. So, that's why I wanna make sure with him right at the front, I wanted to let him know what my intentions are, what I'm okay with. And I said, as long as we can come up with something the community can get behind, I can get behind it. But if the community doesn't want it, I'm not gonna support it. So, I appreciate y'all for coming out here, I appreciate him for
If you,
coming out.
if you have HMO, if you can you somehow in the HMO go ahead and set it up where every unit in there pays for their trash pickup, because they're gonna have to, okay? And whether they want it or not, they're gonna pay for it, because even in our subdivision, in Harborview subdivision, okay? There's people who we have to pay for our trash, they don't, and they take it and dump it someplace. And you look at Timber
You gotta
Valley,
see it on
Timber
Timber
Valley,
Valley.
the same
You gotta
thing,
see it on here,
the subdivision, the townhouses there on Timber Valley, the same way, okay? And they take and just drop their trash out on the road, okay? So if you can just say, okay, guess what? Each unit here is gonna be put in your HMO, you're gonna have it, you don't wanna use it, that's fine, but you're gonna pay for it, so you might as well use it.
Yeah, most
That's
of-
the problem with this area. I don't mind paying for trash at all, okay? But what gets me is, it's an option, you can do it or not, okay? Well, guess what? When you don't, you still gotta do something with your trash, and people just throwing it out there, you know?